What is up, Mark Bare Naked Willie? How you doing today, my friend?
Happy BS Friday Live. Look at that setup today over there. Dave Cooper.
Yeah, well, we're messing around trying to get the studio set up. Got some new sound panels coming in, all kinds of fun stuff. But man, oh man, it is Friday, and do we have a show for you today?
Love this topic, Dave. Sound panels. Does that mean that you don't have to talk on the shows from now on? The panels do all the work?
That's it. That's it. They just do all the work, and it's all that new AI stuff that's coming out, and augmented reality. Oh, I love it. I love it. Mark with the sound effects, everybody. Good job, brother. Hey, so where are you at today? You've been on the road last week. We missed you.
We had zero cell signal. Like I was able to text Dave.
Yeah.
I couldn't get a phone call. I couldn't get Wi-Fi. Great project site. Parts unknown that people don't want to talk about, but wonderful project, Dave. And I was really sad. But last night I got to hang out with Joe Konopecki, who was
cool.
on you, and he said he had a great time, man.
Yeah, we had a great show, Joe. Joe's always a high performer, not only on his buildings, but when he comes on the show, he just brings a lot of energy. And you know where the energy comes from? It's just because he knows his stuff, and that makes it very comfortable and very easy to talk about when it's coming from the heart because you've been doing it so long.
It's what happens where we tried for these 30 to 40 minute shows, and then poof, there's an hour.
I know. It goes by. That's why I said to Joe, I said, listen, we'll be done 30, 35 minutes. And we just kept going and going and going, which is great. So today's probably going to be no different than that. We're going to talk about the youth of our generation coming up. We're going to be talking about building science today, Mark. We are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. So get your tweets on while you're out there. Twitter seems to be a hot topic these days throughout the news. So get the tweeting because people are looking at it.
Are we supposed to also get our Twitch on?
We can Twitch all we want, dude. I love twitching. What the heck? Hey, so listen, Mark. Next Friday, next Friday's the Friday.
You ready for this?
I'm ready. What are you gonna do to me?
Friday. Ready?
Oh yeah. Cat in the Hat reading coming up. Is that a mask or is that just something you hang on the wall?
I think I got this thing when I was like 2 years old.
I love it. Hey, why don't we have Diane join us on the show to read Cat in the Hat? He didn't hear me. How about I say it another way? Why don't we have your mother join our show to read Cat in the Hat?
I think Mama Willie would love to watch the show. I don't think she's into reading books with us. Give her laugh, dude. It's fun.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad.
I'll pass along the invitation, and maybe you and I can take off, and she'll just do the show.
Hey, you know what? Her and the sound panels can have at it. Let them go. I love it. I love it. All right, Mark. So we got a great guest today. This is a great lead up into the ending of our year in Cat in the Hat because it speaks to everything we do on this show, and that is all about education, not only for those that are in the trades currently, but for the youth and the next generation coming up the ladder. So what a better way to end the year because our whole year was nothing but educating and bringing experts on so people can make their own informed decision on how to build it better.
You're 100% correct, except for 1%. Isn't that funny how I said that? So we're not ending the year with this one with Connor because you and I are up next week. And then the final show of the year is actually Stephen.
You mean the Marines coming on the show?
That's right. We're gonna have the Marine architect, and so that would be the final one, which is interesting, Dave, because last year he did the last show of the year, And the year before, he did the first show of the year. So
Come on. Did he really?
pretty much we get some of our presenters to come back on an annual basis.
That's right.
And as long as we're talking about next year, kicking off January is
All right.
Steven Rogers. And you guys can't see the calendar behind me, but you can see it. You just can't see the details. I'm so excited for all the shows. And like Dave said, building trades is the focus on today. And it happens to be that this trade programs, they include performance metric testing, verifying. So education is everywhere. Dave, let's bring in our guest.
I love it. All right, everybody, let's give a big round of applause for Connor Malloy.
Hey, boys, how you doing?
Doing well, Connor. How are you?
Hey, Pete. It's Friday afternoon. I'm with you all, so it's great to be here.
I know it. I know it. We're only a week away from Christmas, so that's exciting. I know my kids are excited, and I bet everybody that you work with and teach at the colleges and everything else that you do hopefully is excited as well. So, Connor, you're no stranger to this show.
No, we chatted, I think it was last year, right? Maybe about, 13, 14 months ago.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Mark.
So, I always smile. I didn't notice in our run through that Connor did his name badge like this. And design, build, educate, my brain, right? Sometimes you see a glass of milk in your brain, pictures an Oreo cookie. When I see design, build, educate, not only do I see Connor and like a whole path of what he does, but I also see one of your counterparts who has a really tricky name that's close to yours. Build,
right.
learn, teach. And so I think it's so, I think nifty is the word for me, but it's also like amazing how those simple words can allow people to remember it, capture it, and find you again. And they could find you morning, noon, and night sharing your work with the students with that simple build, design, educate. It's beautiful.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. I think, when I got on IG, you kind of figure out, well, what is your name going to be? Is it Connor Malloy 109 or 297? You think about, okay, is it my middle name? Is it my dad's maiden name? Or my mom's maiden name? What are those things? So I find my background really is my initial education is in design. I did my undergrad in interior design, then worked in landscape architecture, a couple of architecture shops, some interior shops, and then went back to building. My family business is in the building trades, grew up on job sites. So I knew a large part of what I wanted to do was teach design and teach builders about design, because it's really about communication, how they're communicated to, how to build, of course, and then how to be future leaders and mentors. So that came into place, and you're right, it's so aligned with our friend Matt Bloomquist and Build, Learn, Teach, and his files is a beautiful system of building it, learning what to do, and then replicating and mentoring and teaching. So yeah, thanks, Mark.
And we already learned something. For as many conversations that we had, I had no idea that you were in interior design. It makes sense with your level of detail, compounding your understanding of construction, generally speaking.
Yeah.
But that is it now fills in a lot of spots.
Well, really, it's a byproduct of, I think I'm strong at math, but I think like a lot of people, I didn't test very well in a conventional environment. Having to remember all those facts and figures and finding the vertex of a parabola, that wasn't my jam. It's really applied math. So my math scores are not great. I wanted to go to school for architecture or engineering. Couldn't do that because you needed high 80s and 90s. And then I had a guidance counselor say, have you thought of interior design? Because it's still architectural. And in many ways, I was very lucky. I went to school in Toronto, at that point called Ryerson, it's now Toronto Metropolitan University. And everything I liked about architecture, we learned, but then it's also very hands-on, which kind of brings me to what I teach today. because the whole floor of the school was a full woodworking shop. So if you were designing furniture in first year, you actually went and made furniture. If you're designing light fixtures and learned how to do lumieres and lighting layouts, you went and built light fixtures. You went and built tables and chairs. You built installations. That's from first year, second, third, all the way up to fourth. And now that school has massive integrations into digital fabrication. So first year students use laser cutters, 3D printers, 4-axis cutting heads. They've got Kubota robot arms that can 3D print concrete. This is at a university accessible to interior design students. So for me, interior design was a great place to learn about interiors, the study of the human body, and how people relate to a space. So then I got back into building.
It's a pathway to start the brain in the world of creativity and method.
Yeah.
Which, if you start in the world of construction, it's normally someone says, I need people, and then you end up doing a skill based on the needs around you. But if you begin that in the processes that you did, where you have that creative touch and the methods and selections of, that's a whole different, it's boundaryless, limitless.
Yeah. 100%. I think the biggest thing a design school does as a foundation is to teach you how to solve a problem and how to actually define the problem you're solving. More importantly, who is a user or client you're solving it for. So if it's a kitchen and you're doing it for a client, learning about how that person cooks and lives, what the space is used for, also their height, any mobility challenge they have. That kitchen theoretically should be very different than mine, because we're two different people. I'm very tall. I don't have any mobility issues yet. My kitchen's different. And I think to teach how to learn the problem and who it's for is really something that works in teaching today, right? I have a subject matter, I have a student. That student every year is different. The class I had 6 years ago when I started, their use of media or digital consumption was lower than it is now. So we need to constantly adapt for who we're teaching to, or who we're building for, and who we're designing for.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone.
I have nothing to say. I mean, like, how do you tack on to that? Because that's really it in a nutshell. I mean, how many years have you been teaching now, Connor?
Great question. So I started my first class 7 years ago. 7 years ago, I taught part-time for 2 years, and I'm now taught full-time. This is my fifth September, so 5 years now. Yeah.
I love it. So as we get into this, everybody, we are going to show you some pictures. We got a picture day today. So Connor's going to be sharing some of his Instagram photos and some other things on the show. And we are going to be talking about how to be better in the trades and how to build it better. So appreciate everybody joining us. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. Put a Q in front of it. If you do, it makes it easier for us to find. Or just let everybody know where you're from. You'd be surprised how much business you can do just from chatting in the comments.
Absolutely. And I want everyone to have the mindset, if we can shape your view today, listen to the words of Connor. And when you review what he's saying and the images that accompany this, think about what he is sharing, if it is in your community. And if it's not, think about what it would be like if it was. So simply introducing people in your community to the pathways that George Brown College has in the teaching style and depth that Connor takes to students. This is, as we know, necessary for our community, and I believe it's also our civic duty.
100%, Mark.
Holy mackerel. I'm going to just say it right now. Between Connor and Mark Wille today, I mean, these are some really deep comments, and I'm really appreciative of it. I don't know if it's the end of the year, but you guys are just, I mean, it's very rare that I'm speechless. I'm just going to make shit up and talk to you guys now.
So, it's really Connor's mindset, though. Day in and day out, all of us deal with different parts of the industry,
That's right.
and what's always at the forefront is there's copying conversations. And what I mean by that is people always say, well, we're going to be out of a workforce. We're going to be out of a workforce. Don't talk about what we're going to be out of. Talk about what you're doing and what's being done. These examples are always there. So rather than take the time to say, we're losing this workforce, take the time to say, this is where the workforce is coming from, and we need to do this here. So just start from the step they're at and continue it forward. That will save you 4 sentences and it will begin action. Knowing that we have a shortage is already known. Find someone that doesn't know that and they're
That's
under
right.
a rock, so they don't count. Everyone else, we all count. Each of you count. So the actions you're taking are the examples here. And simply taking this video and saying, I'm not really in this construction space. I don't really know what they're doing, but I know our town needs it. And I want my school board to know it. Boom, YouTube off. Here you go. Check it out.
Perfect. All right, so let's get deeper into that brain of yours, Connor. Right, as we're looking at building trades and teaching the next generation, what are you seeing as the biggest challenge with students coming in now? Like, is there a point where are they showing up expecting what you're going to teach them, or are you finding that there's a whole lot of knowledge that they don't know that's kind of aha moments and it kind of clicks with them, whether they're been in the industry for a long time or whether they're straight out of carpentry school or what have you?
So I think that's a great question, Dave. And I think my learning around that is really counter to what I thought 5 years ago. So I grew up, I'll tell you my story first. Grew up in a very conventional, what I think was the old way of learning trades. My dad's construction business is in its 43rd year, started in 1979. I was on sites from the point I was in like late public school. I learned the trade, worked all summers, went home to university, almost like the carpenter's assistant kind of approach. And for me, if I went on to a trade school, that's kind of who I thought we were taking in the first year in a trade specific program. That isn't really our median user or median learner. In our first year, we bring in 125 students into our 2-year building and renovation technician program. There's a 3rd-year option, but let's say 125 people come in. Of that 125, let's say 10 to 15 people have really used a skill saw before and would call them like reasonably competent, right? Know how to use it safely, know how the guard works, know how kickback works, what side of the saw to stand on. There's probably 15 people of 125. I think a really good test for us is you take your measuring tape and you take the end little clip and you move it back and forth. You ask people whether the tape is broken, whether it has a use. Probably maybe 10 of 100 can tell you what that's for. So our initial student coming in really isn't that deep experienced person in carpentry learning to perfect or further their learning. It's really a starting point. A lot of our students are coming in around sort of 18, 19 years of age. Majority have not come from a technical high school. And I think that's because we've seen a kind of rollback, at least in Ontario, with my public school growing up had a full wood shop, 3,000 square feet. We made things. My high school had a full wood shop. We made things, but a lot of our students don't have that. So coming into first year, we're really starting with students at the ground floor in tool safety, job site safety, basics of framing layout, how to select lumber, how to crown studs, all things you learn on a job site your first, second summer. That's our starting point. And I think for us, the hard thing is in 2 years, how do we take a learner from the beginnings of understanding of carpentry and safety to a point of view or to a point where they can feel confident on a job site in 2 years in a shop-based teaching program.
Right.
So that's kind of our learner. And that took me a while to get my head around to think, okay, yes, this is a college program, but we're starting at the ground floor as far as like hands-on skill.
Well, and so it's interesting, right? And how old are the students when they first get to you?
So the college on average actually skews older. George Brown's average, I think, is like 23, 24, a lot of second career. But in the trades for us, majority are direct from high school. So that would be in Ontario 17, maybe upwards of 18, 19. So younger than 20.
I almost look at, and maybe I'm looking at this wrong, but with that younger mid 20 range coming into the school, and I was writing down some stuff, 10 to 15 out of that 125 may know how to use a skill saw. And then the other one, maybe 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10 also understands what the end of the ruler really means, whether it's broken or not, with the flexion that's in the end of that ruler. That tells me that you have, roughly 95 to 110 students that you can mold with all of the right information without having a whole lot of bad habits to break right out of the gate.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if we flip our head, let's say we were a business, we're bringing 125 employees a year. Would you want the really established worker who has some habits, good or bad, or would you want to teach your company culture and how you build and operate? So for us, that's kind of the approach we take. And the hard thing about residential carpentry, and for us, we almost have like a general contracting kind of lens on. We're teaching carpentry, but not deep into areas of, let's say, formwork and traditional ICI stuff. It's really the idea of, it's the renovation carpenter, that person who knows about 80% of most trades, know how to connect all those things together. That's kind of who we're teaching. And for that person to come in, if we can teach them the best principles in those areas through kind of learned examples and through our own faculty, because the renovation carpenter, there isn't a textbook on how to be that person.
Yeah.
There isn't a textbook there's textbooks in carpentry, but that learning of, threading the trades together and what happens between board and trim, or from framing to rough ends, that carpenter does like 10 things. And we want to teach those people the best principles on how to do that through learned examples, building the shop.
I think it's interesting. I don't believe 2.5 years, Dave and I have hung out with professionals like you, Connor. I don't believe anyone has used the word renovate on the show yet. And
it might just feel like I'm Canadian. If I said remodel, is that?
Well, no, obviously we know what the word means. It struck me because one, we know there's a never-ending supply of existing buildings, and they all need work, right? The building stock is from, let's say, 1840 to a year ago, right? There's always something to be done. And the tasks, as you said, they range and they overlap. And so I cut my teeth on a lot of renovation, rehab work, whatever you classify it as. And my favorite word, I want to see how this lands for you, Connor. And Dave's heard me say it before, is discovery.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because you walk through that and people have a list that this needs to get done and this needs to get done. But once you have to open it up, once you have to explore, if you will, there's a great level of discovery that says you have to do this. You now have this to contend with. And the carpenters and so on might find a wild hair of electric, might find an abandoned gas pipe exactly where they need to go, right? That magic of discovery. Renovation work is exciting.
You're right. It is exciting on multiple levels. And it's also, if you look at how to teach, it's also really effing hard, because you first have to teach someone how to build. And the renovation aspect is then how to take that thing apart safely and then reconstruct all of its layers and make things connected and continuous. So our program is a renovation and building technician. So we teach both renovation and building. So a lot of our in-class is really the initial steps of how you construct, and then we teach them how to take things apart. But if you go to like the economics of the Canadian market, at least, I'm not sure the US market, the renovation market in Canada is bigger than the new home building market. So I think a couple of years ago, the stat was 57 billion was the renovation market, and it was 56 billion for new home building. So it's a massive, massive market. So I think to spend so much time, you look at a lot of the home builder groups and land development associations, all focus on new construction. The grants education usually no construction. A lot of the shows new construction, but so much of our industry is renovation. So we can teach these students best principles on how to work on a job site safely, how to take things apart, think about connecting things back together again. But more importantly, when we teach business, how you run a successful business in renovation, and you track things like labor, estimate properly. These are things that no one teaches. And I grew up in this business. I understand more than most. But renovation is such a key thing to teach in schools.
So let me ask you this. Renovations are one thing, right? Let's talk about renovations and keeping the client happy. That's another thing. And what do I mean by that, right? It's always what we can't see because we don't have x-ray vision. We don't have goggles. Now, there is new stuff coming out that you can scan behind the walls and all this fun stuff. But how do you teach that? How do you teach managing the client expectation? And do you or don't you? Because that's the biggest headache, and what gives us a bad name out here is, well, he told me it was $100,000 before he was done. It was $150,000. I can't believe that fool didn't know there was pipes running through the wall there, and electrical tie-ins everywhere. And then 20 years ago, somebody put an illegal junction box in between the studs behind the right. There's all of this stuff that happens when you're doing that, and it almost sounds like I have some experience in it.
So, Dave, those are great questions. I think I have a two-part answer. One is it's very hard to teach an 18 or 19-year-old learner the intricacies about client management when they're just so far from initially managing that client.
Yeah.
The lessons in deck building, framing, window installation kind of resonate more. And that's why the theory courses in estimation, client relations, business management, scheduling are harder. And then take kind of more imagination how to connect to make that less relevant. But when we teach business management, estimation, it does come from that perspective around client management and expectation management. And again, we took it from examples. So when we talk about teaching estimation and managing those unknowns, we don't pull a book or a project from the textbook. We build examples from my own portfolio or my colleagues that I teach with, their own portfolios. We take those plans. We sometimes bring the students to our old client's house. They meet the client. They walk through the finished work. We describe what was there before. And then when they learn how to estimate, they actually estimate that project they've just walked through. So they get the previous photo, they get the video, and we learn by teaching them what the unknowns were. Because otherwise it's just theoretical. But what we do teach is two classifications of unknowns. We have I have a colleague used to say the known unknowns, and we have the unknown unknowns. So it's kind of BS to say, well, yeah, we're going to have to do a change order on the floor because we can't get the thin set to blend in here because the floor is at a level. Well, at evaluation of the building, if you brought a laser level, you could check. So let's actually bring a checklist. Let's check these things. Well, we didn't know it was asbestos, so we have to change our asbestos. Well, you didn't know it was in the wall on the duct liner, but you should have done a DSS to test for asbestos-containing materials in the plaster finishes. And actually, let's take a little sidebar here and learn about historical HVAC design and learn when and why we use asbestos. Here are the three reasons. Here's where we find it. Let's actually ask the client to cut some exploratory holes. We go cut some places where we know we might have duct wrap and explore all the known unknowns. We know we usually find them. So let's build in some understanding, contingency, and prepare the client's budget to handle some of these things. And then we talk about the unknown unknowns. I didn't know I had termites in my house. No way I could have known that. But I reserved 50% of my budget to handle unknown unknowns. So these are the metrics we're going to teach them how to manage the client's expectations. Because if we know they happen, let's plan take some money to deal with those things. So that's how we teach it, the best of our ability, to a 19-year-old.
I listen. It's brilliant in a way, and it's even more brilliant if they're learning how to talk about the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns with the client and documenting that with the client, because that's just going to help build a great relationship with the client, and they will not be surprised if something went south behind the walls when they found the unknown unknown.
That's it. And if it does go south, you go back to the conversation. In those scoping sessions, we talked about these things being a likelihood in your building. We thought we had knob and two. We left 5,000 electrical to deal with that. It looks like we need to use 6,000. So yes, we have some money associated, but it's actually a bit more. They're kind of prepared for that because you talked about it versus saying, there's no way we could have known that. Well, I'm sorry, dude, but the house is from 1895.
Right.
It had 3 electrical systems. So let's assume, based on your learned history, that it's very common. So I think if we can teach them those things, and that's the thing about renovation. You're not just learning current building code and how to frame and form a house. You have to learn, in the city of Toronto at least, we have homes as old as 1880 and, as Mark said, as new as last year.
Right.
Think of what the WRBs or lack of WRBs used in the past 142 years. It's a lot. Foundation types, there's like 5. Well, now with all the SEFs, like 6, 7. You have to learn all those areas. So if you're tying into them, taking them apart, deconstructing them, that's a lot for someone to learn. So we do our best to prepare them with the breadth and diversity in building types, and where the common, like we call them, like watch outs. What do you want to watch out for when you're budgeting? What do you want to watch out for when you're taking things apart? Because it's complex.
Sounds like you need to bring Joe Konopacki in for a couple class teaching sessions. I bet he knows a little bit about that.
100%.
Hey, let's go to a couple hellos and comments. What do you think, guys?
Okay.
I know I flashed a couple up, but it's always fun to give them shout outs. We got Big Dog, Aaron Jones out there. What's happening, Aaron? Good to see you, my friend. Rob Hoskin, DCL in the house. Hey, Rob, gonna have a little time off during the holidays. We should grab us some breakfast while we're here in Pittsburgh. Let me know if you're interested. Send me a chat. Andrew Seeley, Dave Cooper Live, Knit Hat has keeping me warm and alive somewhere in Texas. Hey, man, you're right. It's that one right there. How cool is that knit hat?
Awesome.
Love it, love it, love it. My bald head wears it all the time. So I'm glad you're enjoying it, Andrew. I can't wait. Mark, I don't know if you saw some of Andrew's recent photos of him putting his standing seam on his building out there, but we may have to have Andrew on for a surprise update because it's looking really cool.
Yeah, Andrew and I talk daily, and it is exciting. Definitely someone to follow. He's been harboring a lot of these photos and images, but nope, he's booked for next year, and it's going to be fun.
Well, he will be part of the Dave Cooper Live crew as we're out at IBS this year, Mark. So you will see him there as well. So you'll be seeing Andrew definitely maybe before he's even on the show, everybody. So that's always great to hear. Look at that. Another educator in the house, Matt Bloomquist. Connor. He just can't get enough of your name, this guy, huh? Good to see you, Matt. Good to see you. Good to see you. Devon Tilley. Well said, Mark Wille. Yeah, it's not often, but sometimes Mark surprises all of us. I love it. I'm just kidding. Smartest guy I know right there. All right, Buzz is in the house. Happy BS Friday from Fishigan. Oh, man, he must be Fishigan. Fishigan.
So we got to dive deep into renovation, and I'd like to take the time to segue, if y'all are up to it, and do some screen sharing, because when Dave brings up what people are up to and what they're sharing, some of your posts, Connor, over the last several weeks have been electric.
That's great.
And the space y'all work out of, we learned is the training spot from the 60s originally, right? And it's taken on new lives over time. And what it's being used for today did not exist in the 60s that I know of. If it did, I'm the guy under the rock. So why don't you screen share, Connor, and take us on a journey?
No problem. Yeah, I kind of I can preface this by saying, back to the idea of like renovation. So let me just show you where we were at last week. We'll kind of go backwards. So when we talk about, building science, and
if you're not sharing on my end, just to let you know, so you have to reshare. Yep.
I'll do it right now. Okay, I'll pull out my photos here. You see that?
Got it.
Okay. So we're talking about applied building science. Our program and programs like ours have had building science courses for a while. We've talked about different rating systems like LEED and Passive House and net zero homes. We talk about the theories and the importance of airtightness, the importance of continuity, and so much of it's done in the lecture hall. And then we teach students how to frame downstairs, and then we teach them how to build stairs, and then we teach them how to do rough ends electrical. So what we try to be doing as a college the past few years is really learn about how to teach a carpenter about. I'll just flip through these things. About so here's Aaron and Joe who visited us a couple weeks ago. These are some of our students that are building here and building different types of like mini mock-ups and envelopes. So our big learning by looking at students graduating a couple years ago and where they are on a job site and the importance of understanding how to build a really strong envelope starts with when we teach framing in first year. So if I go here, let's just flip through the photos. If I go here to where we were last week in the shop, so here's our shop. One second here. Here's our shop downstairs. So we're in a 1960s college. It's downtown Toronto. It's 10-foot ceilings. To the underside of the forum concrete, it's 11.5. So we have this constraint of a one-story structure. So we've always taught framing downstairs, but we never really took the building science, which is delivered in a classroom, and put that into first-year learning, first-year framing. So what we've been doing recently is, this started just past September, after 3 years of redevelopment, is if we're teaching framing, let's also teach how to install WRBs properly and how those can be a primary air control layer. So that first-year student learning how to crown, learning how to select lumber, how to frame on 16s, putting in cripples and jacks. They also learn about wrapping headers. They learn about flashing details to manage water, because at the framing stage, we're applying building science. It isn't just this blower door test done by a specialist down the road. We have to teach it at those initial stages. If we're teaching, foundation forming, we do mock-ups here. We have to show them, where does the vapor control start in that floor assembly? How does it wrap up beyond that slab and then connect into the interior vapor control? These are things that I think we did a lot of talking in previous decades, and most courses did, but a student needs to get hands-on with tapes, adhesives, barriers, membranes. Otherwise, they really need that kind of tactile experience. So it's what we've been kind of learning how to do. And, recently we've made big investments. Let me go back here. Recently we've made big investments in our building science equipment so that we can buy, if we're teaching airtightness, and we talk about how important it is, we should really show people how to test and learn from their successes and their weaknesses in their built shop projects.
Yep.
So we went to the Energy Conservatory in Minneapolis at Bloor last year. We bought 4 passive house duct blaster kits and 2 of the full-size fan kits. So we can take students to job sites, build mock-ups in the shop here. Here are some of the little mock-ups that we're building. Different assemblies, different materials. So these students have some tactile experience with a self-adhered membrane for exterior WRB and air control, a integrated product like the great zip products from Hoover, a mechanically fastened product from both 475, Proclima, and Siga, and also some wet applied stuff. So we're trying to really build learning examples and courses around tactile learning and making building science really hands-on, because I think it's fundamental and it's really foundational to being a good carpenter.
I like this slide, and I have to say the slide prior is genius. That has the 2x4 walls, the OSB,
Yeah.
and the Tyvek by DuPont. Tyvek really paved the way for the industry, and it's a great product to also learn on.
100%.
And then adaptation comes from there. And I want to applaud you guys for achieving this in the confines of 11-foot with pipes and structure and the likes. But it's so clean and organized, and you can almost see the history in those floors.
Yeah.
And now the adaptation to the diverse amount of membranes and tapes and these testing kits sitting all around there from our friends at Minneapolis who are kicking off January with us, Stephen Rogers.
Oh, great.
This is awesome. everyone's got their belts on, they shoes on. Some of them, they don't even want to take off their hard hats. It's great. And
Yeah, no, it's
so what are we seeing in front of us here, Connor?
so what we see is what we did is we realized until we changed the program this year substantially, where in previous years students would learn the theory of construction out of sequence. So now we've kind of relaunched the program right now in first year. And that is what these larger structures are you're now seeing in our shop. So starting in first year, every student now learns how a complete building is framed. These are little like tiny houses. So we have about 18,000 square feet of interior shop for carpentry. And these structures will sit on the floor over their complete 2-year education. They will frame them. They'll come back next semester and they will build decks in the exterior. They'll put the rain screen on. They'll roughen the interior, and then they'll sit on the floor the whole summer. They'll come back to school their second year. They'll drywall it, paint it, trim it, put millwork in it. Their last semester learn how to renovate it. We'll add bay windows. We'll move interior walls. We'll move bearing walls, put little additions on so they can renovate that structure. So our new students coming in as of this past September, all of them will learn building science applied to an envelope, applied to structure, and learn how to teach it. Students who were in the previous stream didn't have this kind of applied building science within the core projects. So we created a kind of a really fun course to operate just for 2 years until the new curriculum came out. And that is what we're seeing here, where students were, let's go to favorites here. We called it applied building science. And we wanted a way to teach students how to build a small controlled mock-up that had all the control layers that a large 2-story house has. So we had them build this mock-up. We designed it with the students in SketchUp. It's roughly 2 feet deep. It's 4 feet tall. It's 4 feet wide. So it's pretty material efficient. It's got a little mock first floor. The main floor you see there, the first floor is only 14 inches tall. It's got a 2x6 second floor with some joist ends and joist cavities. And it has a second floor with a single window penetration. And then we've also taught them about, advanced framing. There's no double top plates here because we're lining up all of our rafters with that little heel on the end, with our studs, with our joists. It's pretty efficient that way. So the first thing to do to make sure we're also just not teaching this, we want building science to be something you apply to every project and not only passive and elite level Swiss material projects. So the first way we taught the course was what we call a best practice code assembly. So all the assemblies used tie back on the exterior. They used tuck tape, learned how to roll and properly apply pressure. We insulated with rock wool to minimum code levels. And then half the teams learned how to use 6-mil polyethylene and Acoustiseal and staples and tape, and using the best details we could with standard code level materials. And then we took them outside and we pressurized them. So we built basically, we didn't actually know TEC made a smaller frame than the door frame. So we made a panel. It's 1x4. We ran clear vinyl on it and cut a hole so we can tape the duct blaster into it. So we could pressurize and depressurize their little pod. And to make it kind of, visceral for them, before we pressurized it, we put a theatrical fogger inside of it, ran the cores out of the panel so we could fog it, pressurize it, and they can look for leaks on the exterior. So
that's great.
Yeah, because what we want to show is these principles of building an airtight enclosure and one that is watertight with water management details. These are things we should apply to every project, and not just pretty good house projects, not just passive projects, and not just high performance projects. So we wanted that learning to be across the board with every building system.
So let me ask you this then, right? Because here we're going to build airtight house, and everything always comes back to client budget. And I bring this up all the time. Now you need some sort of fresh air system.
Yeah.
You know, how do the students understand how to work with a budget and what they can do? Because there's this side of them with the angel saying, man, I got to build it the way I learned in school. This is the proper way to do it. I can't not bring fresh air in. What am I going to do? Am I going to take a hit on my profits because I have to, you know, like how does the fair balance of this all work out? Because I think that's going to be a struggle, you know, until we come up with this is the norm, because it's not the norm. It's not code, at least here in the States, to have ERV and HRV and fresh air systems in. So I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
how do we teach about that?
Well, I mean, to turn on screens for a second. So I think for me, what this starts with really is teaching them really how to select the jobs, the clients that they wanted to work for.
Yep.
But before that is really understanding that what is your cost of doing work?
Mm-hmm.
How to really define a scope of work. So you take a set of drawings. If that's a permit level set of drawings, which shows a wall assembly that calls for a certain level of insulation, it just specifies a vapor control or vapor barrier. That's saying to the builder, you have to decide what you're going to build and price. So if you only price in poly and the minimum insulation levels, and then list all of your like options as upgrades, the client only sees that as like additional cost. But if you in-house, I think, learn that a roll of 6 mil poly here is like 110 bucks. A roll of Sika MyVest is about 3 or 4 times more, but you look at the performance difference, your installation cost is the same. So when your carpentry labor is billed out at $50 an hour, that's the same. So really you're talking about a couple $100 in that material. So we can learn and teach them, we call them, you know, like being, what is it? Pound wise, penny poor. Let's focus on the big wins we can do by building in some best principles into our base estimates. How do you sell the value in comfort and building durability? You know, we can teach them to look at the finished package. If you see the specifying thicker interior doors, solid core, nice beefy trim that's got returns or backband on it, you know they're being bought and sold into a higher level trim package. So why don't we teach them about higher level building envelope?
That's right.
And teach them the value. These are things they can't see, but if you can sell them on durability in their investment, long-term management, and comfort, these are things that we can sell them on how to sell. And if they price them in from the start, then they can build them. So I think that's fundamental.
Well, you know what? And it's fundamental to everybody listening to this that isn't in school, that is already out in the field. And, you know, these are lessons that everyone can take and learn and really, you know, retrain themselves or retrain some of their own building consultants or salespeople, whatever they call themselves when they're out there trying to get a new job. You know, sometimes you just it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
100%. I think, so to share something else about my background, where I learned to sell a lot from my dad as a builder and was a salesperson for the business. Learned how to sell from him, but the other place was not in construction at all. I used to sell actually at a women's retail store selling performance athletic gear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I worked for Lululemon at a school for 2 years doing store design and worked retail sales. Why that was so powerful is you could not work in their retail store design team unless you knew how the product worked and how to sell to their client. Because how do you build a store that's basically a sales tool unless you know what the client wants, how to sell to them? So their big thing was every product in the store has about 13, 14 different uses or like, let's call them benefits. You had to ask each client coming in what the problem you're trying to solve by buying that short, shirt, jacket, whatever. And you prioritize of those 14 different values, what are the top 3 they need to hear that resonates with their problem?
Yeah.
So we take that, and that's extremely successful to sell for someone. So rather than you reading off that hang tag with all the 14 things, focus on the top 3 that resonates with that person that solves their problem. So back to the building piece, if you hear that they renovate because they want a house that is bigger, more light-filled and comfortable, then hit that home on how you sell the envelope. So it comes down to understanding your user and their pain points. Their pain points around what it's like to live in their home. Go to that motivation and learn how to sell to them.
Yeah. You know, we talk about it all the time on some of our other shows, Mark, and Mark knows this as well, is, you know, this isn't new concepts, right? It's just new to our industry. And a lot of this outside of our industry knowledge that we can use in our industry, works and it exists. And we say this even with automation and manufacturing. And nobody's really inventing something new. It exists out there. It's just how do we use it within our industry? And I think and how do you stack that tech stack or that knowledge stack or that educational stack or sales stack that's already out there being used around the world everywhere else? How do we use those same techniques and take that same approach in our industry? And I think that's where people really need to look. You just said it flat out, right? Lululemon help you cut your teeth. I love it. Comfortable clothes, by the way. I can't afford them, but they're comfortable.
It is true. I mean, it's got that three-way stretch.
I know, Mark. You and I, Lululemon, will do yoga out in Vegas.
I think the example is clear with that. There's attributes and there's quality, and this program and how you deliver that. One of the things that landed for me so much was okay. First and foremost, everything about the program is amazing, but one of the things that landed so much was that later on, there's renovation being done to the spaces that are built. God, is that genius? I think it's amazing. I'm a little bit marveled and stammering on that point. Attributes. And I'm telling you, I think next year, because we have 20 shows booked for next year. I think we need to conserve a month towards the renovation and parts of the industry because of what you said today, Connor. It landed so well. And I want to say, just acknowledge you for the work you do and the support you get from the school to deliver this. While you guys don't have the ceiling height that would be ideal, you have the footprint and you maximize the growth of these students. When they walk out of there, they might be telling some employers things that the employers haven't heard before. And boy, is that special, right? Like when people are giddy enough to say, oh, I know what they're talking about here, boss. We did this.
Yeah.
We did this in school. I'm not really good at it, but I know about it and I want to be better. Boy, I tell you what, you tell that to your boss, that's jet fuel, baby.
Absolutely. That's how you start climbing the ladder a little bit. All right, we're almost at the end of the show here. We got some comments and a question from Greg Ugaldi as well we want to get through here, Mark.
And I see Connor's eyes. I think he's looking for an image. Am I right?
Looking for a picture that kind of goes to a story about everything with scale, Mark. So I'll find that.
You find that. Let's pull up. Why don't you tell us? Okay, I'll do Jonathan's and you do Greg's. Jonathan Finewood says, and by the way, great post today on LinkedIn, brother, on ventilation, just as Dave mentioned earlier. I love having someone with no carpentry skills. It was much easier to train them. I found it way harder to train when they had bad habits already. Yes. You work with what you have and always make sure you better one another.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll see it when you put it up, Connor. When you're ready, I'll know. All right, we got Peter Molinar. Discovery is like opening Pandora's box. That's it. I love it. How many people are going to be shopping at Pandora? Isn't that a jewelry store as well this year, huh? It's starting to eat into the wallets. We're going to do, I see it up there, Connor. We'll go to it in just 1 second. Jake Harris, everybody, I want to put this up. Disclose assumptions and risks up front. Jake Harris is on our show Monday. He has a company called Build Wallet. You guys trying to figure out when you're doing your projects, whether it's renovation or construction, how to make sure that everything gets paid and done the way it's supposed to be getting done, not only from the client side, but also from the contractor side. They have come up with the solution on how to do that. It's pretty darn cool. Highly suggest everybody tune in for this one because it's not your typical banker's story. I can guarantee it. All right, here's my question from Greg, and then we'll get into your pictures. Dave, Jen, and Mark, Connor brings out some great considerations. Question, while you mentioned that specific user details are critical during construction, how about resale considerations, which may include more generalized concerns? That's a great question.
It's one thing we do, Greg, when we teach students of how to package essentially like an upgraded project or envelope in any regard, whether it's interior finishes, is how to build a closeout binder, and that allows the direct homeowner right now to understand what is in their home, what's been installed, right from the envelope to interior details, and then how to maintain those things. And that has been presented in a way that it's a sales document for their company moving forward that client can show to a colleague and say, this is what they did, this is what's in my project, but like a user manual for a car. And at resale, I found when we did this as a company, it told prospective buyers what they're buying is different than a house on the street because of how it's been built. Here's the proof documentation. And it becomes a sales tool for their business again, because more often than not, the new home buyer came back to us to have us re-renovate or do stuff with them because of how we prepared them. So that's one thing we've been able to do is document the projects, use as a sales tool for now or in the future.
I love it. Greg,
I'll
thank
tell
you for joining us.
The other added benefit of the binder is 8 months from now, 14 months from now, 3 years from now, when you get a call, can you send me this? Do you have this? As a builder, you say it's in your binder,
Yeah.
right? You've already included all that stuff in the
That's right.
binder because
Yep.
you're really not going to remember that project. When you're on it, you're on it. And
Right.
then you get caught up in other stuff. The lead programs, as David Jennifer did as well, very beneficial in that place. You have the binder.
That's right.
And everything you buy, you put in there and you put in there. And
Yep.
we used to just keep a plastic container store box.
Sure.
And that actually went into a red cardboard box to keep the dust out. And I told the guys, I don't care what pamphlet you have, put it in there, put it in there, put it in there.
And also, I think to know how much time that takes on a project basis and build that into your estimate. That's a deliverable product. You should charge for that time. If you charge for that time, you're actually going to do it because you're being paid for it. You can bill it, and guess what? For you, selfishly, 3 years from now, when that lead carpenter's not with you anymore, their brain is gone.
That's
Their
right.
phone is gone. Their text messages are gone. Now you have the actual document being organized by the person who built it. So selfishly do it for yourself, do it for the homeowner in future resale.
It's a weird bit of leverage too, because when you produce a contract, the contract is for services delivered.
Uh-huh.
It's not for documentation.
Right.
So if someone wants the documentation, you can write in your contract that at final payment, this will be handed over.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. That's right. All right, I see it. Let's put it up there, and then we're going to get to a couple more comments and wrap up.
Yeah, this kind of just goes to your thing, Mark, about scale. We do the best we can with our ceiling height, and our student numbers are pretty large for a program like ours. And some students do chirp me sometimes, like, "Why don't you do something bigger?" And this is an example of these are two students working on a small mock-up, again, 2x4. They were so excited from doing the first floor. They turned around, had lunch, came back, and they flipped tapes without knowing it until I talked to them. So they used Resand, which is a vapor control tape on the main story, and then they flipped to the WRB tape. And it didn't matter whether this was a small project or then in a whole house.
Yeah.
We talk about that difference on a small scale and the teaching around permeability of tapes and adhesion, all these things. The scale doesn't really matter here so much. It's the learning, whether it's a mock-up like this or a two-story building.
I love it.
Is this the ones that they also renovate, or that's those other larger Tyvek ones?
It's the larger ones. Yeah, the larger ones will get fully renovated. We'll move bearing walls. We'll move windows, doors. These are for the students who won't get that learning because they graduate in one semester.
Yeah, and those are the ones we showed earlier in the show. So if you joined us late and just hearing this part, you can go back and see the larger mock-up builds that they have as well.
Yeah, and we'll share more of that later.
As a point of carpentry, are they screwed together or nailed?
Great question, Mark. We actually use smooth shank nails because they're easier to take apart. So lumber is expensive. Our program is really expensive to deliver. So we have to take things. So they are nailed to practice nailing, talk about shear strength, but we don't use spirals and Ardox. We use smooth shank.
Okay. So that's part of the education process is the assembly Look, before you said the known and the unknown, but for the building, there's the assembly and the future disassembly or unbuilding or deconstruction, whatever your magic term is. Live it, learn it, use it, abide by it.
100%.
All right, let's get to a couple more comments here. Look at that. Miles Biggs in the house. Miles
Hey, Miles.
Biggs, man. You know what? He lives in Pittsburgh now too. We gotta connect Miles and I. Hopefully we can do that over the holiday. But Miles was a co-host in the very early beginnings when we had our marketing show, which was absolutely awesome. We had a lot of fun on that show, and Miles is still big in the marketing world. And man, I miss him. We used to do the live walkthroughs together at the IBS shows. Man, we used to have so much fun.
Yeah, Miles wrote a book, and he always did those walk-arounds, right?
Yeah,
Where he would walk, and he would videotape his thoughts. And
yeah.
the guy wrote a book, and
he was a TED Talker as well. He was on TED Talks. So I'm glad, man. I hope the guy is successful. I'm sure he is going to be.
I went to high school with Ted. He's a nice guy.
Did ya? That's funny. Hey, Rob Hoskin, pretty nice shop setup. Sweet duck blast as blower door fans. So good to hear you're bringing building science all the way back to the framing stage. Absolutely. Love it. Appreciate you, Rob. Look at that. The Live Free Contracting folks in the house. Good to see you. You want to talk about building it better and renovations? That's what they do. They know how to do it, and they're a lot of fun to work with, too, I'm sure. I got to spend some time with them traveling the world, and I will say they were a lot of fun. So I can only imagine what it's like if you're working with them as a client. It's got to be a lot of fun. Yeah. Jonathan Finewood says, question. Go ahead, Mark. You take this one.
Jonathan, up again. Q, how have you marketed your students to potential employers?
It's a great question, Jonathan. I find
they're most starting their, or are they mostly starting their own businesses? Great question.
Yeah, so we graduate students into 2 years. They can come out of the 2-year program or the 3rd-year program. In the 3rd-year program, they learn a lot of business management, accounting principles, all that kind of stuff. We find even of that group, maybe 5 or 10% start their own business within the first 5 years, but majority don't. Majority go work for other people. And what we do really religiously is make sure, like, we're an outcomes-based learning establishment. We deliver based on what employers need to have their crews doing a job site. So every 2 years, we go out to our employers, people who actually employ our students, and those who did not hire students, learn about what is working successfully for them and what they're needing us to teach. We constantly improve, make sure our students are desirable, employable, and our students have a good time getting employed. But those who do want to start their own business, we have those foundational skills and how to write business plans. But more importantly, we have a big network. I have WhatsApp groups with the past 5 years I've taught. We ask questions on a daily basis on job sites. We help them navigate that world of construction to make sure they're successful as they start to think about opening a shop. They're charging enough. Look at their risk contracts. So majority go work for people, but we try and support as much as we can for those who want to start their own show.
Love it. Great, Jonathan. Thank you for that. All right, here's the last comment. Then I also have a question. Does anybody out there know of any passive house or high performance building projects happening in Las Vegas right now? We would love to find out and maybe even visit their job site while we're out there. Mark's going to be there. I also know that other folks are looking to go and check out some local builds while we're there. So if anybody in the audience knows of any projects that are happening in the Las Vegas area during the IBS session, which is the end of January, beginning of February, let us know in the comments or send us a DM.
That's a great request. It's funny, we think of Vegas and we kind of call it a desert. It's not really a desert, but what it is a passive house desert. And there's regions around the world that are passive house centric, and that's because the cities and municipalities are striving for energy reduction standards and efficiency.
Yeah.
And so with those policies, with that education, with that program, and with those grants, those cities are setting themselves up for success, be it a stretch code, be it a step code, whatever the application is. British Columbia, as well as Ontario are really big into that. You'll find the same in New York State and a tremendous growth in Massachusetts. But when you look at that, all the other provinces, as best I know, and states, um, it's their turn to now not figure out what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste.
Love it. Love it. All right. We're going to wrap up today's show with a comment from Peter Molinar. You guys know who Peter Molinar is?
Oh, yeah.
Of course we do. Go ahead, Mark.
All right, Peter, who I believe Peter's also in Ontario. He's got a great background. He says high performance construction is healthy, comfortable, quiet, dust reduced, resilient, durable, affordable, energy efficient, complementary, and has predictable performance. No unwanted moisture odors and will keep the wild things out. Amen. Bless your
Great.
heart.
Love it. Love it. Connor, did we leave anything off the table today that you wanted to make sure everybody knew about before we wrap up?
I think it's really just a call to action that if you know anyone really young, like not necessarily high school, but if you have a chance to go into a public school and talk to a class about building, even careers in trades, I don't know whether every guidance counselor in a public school or high school is, equipped with the tools to talk about potential careers. So really to let students know early in life, whether they're grade 7, 8, or grade 10, 11, 12, a career in the trades is a place to grow. It's a successful place to be. And it's really fulfilling. So to go out there and sponsor people to go out there and think about that as a career or offer summer internships, I highly recommend you go do that so that we can support our trades and keep building.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And speaking of announcements, in January, keep following Connor on all your social media sites like Instagram, like LinkedIn, because in January, Connor will be announcing wallassembly.com year 4 for high school students. Say everyone's already calling. They want to be a part of it.
That's right. Hey, just saw you on the Dave Cooper Live BS Friday show with Mark, Bare Naked Willie. Can we talk?
That's it. Yeah,
There it
starting in
is.
January, we're launching a student design competition for wall assemblies.
Yeah.
We'll do any high school student, university student, college student, anything. It's free to enter. It's great prizes, but a great way just to celebrate your work and celebrate your ideas in building building envelopes.
If you're in the trade programs or not, if you're in the architecture programs or not, jump into that. And if you're involved in the industry and you work for companies in the industry, guess what? Not only
What?
is it your duty to share this competition, but sponsor it. Because last year there was like $20,000
Yeah.
in amazing education gifts for the students. Practice what you preach, pay it forward, take action, and connect with Connor Malloy, Design, Build, Educate.
I don't know. Enough said there, I guess. That's it, everybody. Listen, thank you for tuning in today. Make sure you put on your calendars BS Friday next week. Mark and I will be reading our favorite Cat in the Hat book. So grab your kids. It is kid friendly. I can tell you right now, we have a lot of fun with it. Have a laugh or two. Bring something to drink. We usually do as well. And we're just going to enjoy the Friday before the holiday. So we appreciate everybody out there tuning in today. Connor, we appreciate you tuning in today as well. And just real quick, remember Monday expert interview. You want to join us. Build Wallet on. You're a general contractor, small, medium, or large. You want to check this out. This is new. This is exciting. This is just another tool in your tool belt to make sure that you get paid and your clients are happy. So you definitely want to join us for Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. All right, Mark, I will see you guys on the other end. Don't go anywhere. We're going to wrap this up. Everybody have an awesome Friday. And just remember, rest up because Monday's coming and it's time to get back to building it better. Peace, everybody. Bye now.